He moved Lacey's body into this 14-foot fishing boat, which he then drove to the Berkeley Marina to dump his wife and son in the San Francisco Bay. But even prosecutors admit they're not exactly sure how he did it.
I've never seen a case where the prosecutor couldn't prove how it happened, where it happened, or when it happened.
He does not have time to do what he's convicted of doing.
The evidence shows that at 8:40, the morning Lacey was reported missing, someone was online at the Peterson home shopping for women's clothing and a sunflower umbrella stand. Lacey had a sunflower tattoo on her ankle. Then at 10:30, Scott logged onto his warehouse computer for 26 minutes, sending a holiday greeting email to his boss and looking up how to assemble a woodworking tool he'd recently purchased.
At the time, according to the state, Scott has killed his wife earlier that morning, and she's in the truck outside on a public street. And he's inside on the internet looking about how to build a woodworking tool and sending holiday greetings. That's a psychopath.
People that think that Scott is just a psychopath that is taking you and the rest of the family for a distorted ride by not admitting guilt, but he is guilty. What do you say to them?
I guess I would circle back and ask him what piece of evidence makes you think he's guilty. And I'd want to, be specific.
Clearly, the most damning evidence is the fact that Lacey and Connor's bodies washed up where Scott says he was fishing.
That is the probable cause that got him arrested, but that's not sufficient when his alibi was so widely publicized immediately.
Of course it's incriminating. Everyone in the world knew where Scott was. So anyone who had Lacey or had killed Lacey knew exactly where to put her.
Scott's attorneys and family believe he was convicted in large part because of his affair with Amber Fry and the audio recordings played for the jury.
How did you grapple with that, not knowing how he did it?
I don't know how he did it. I just know he did it.
How?
My belief is, a typical soft kill, that's, strangulation or smothering in the home.
Wouldn't that leave evidence?
No. The fact that nobody can tell you exactly how he did it is not nearly as important as the fact that they can tell you that based on all the evidence and testimony that he did do it.
I want to bring in my guest for this hour. Still with me, trial attorney, former federal prosecutor Steve Barrick, and joining us, criminal defense attorney Silva Megerditchian. All right, let's talk, Silva, first, please, about this case and the reality, in your opinion, of the judge saying, okay, jury misconduct, we have a new trial for Scott Peterson.
First of all, Judge Ashley, thank you so much for having me on again. It's truly an honor every time I'm with you. It's fascinating. I remember this trial the first go around and how upset the public was. This really was one of the biggest cases and everyone was enthralled by it. I think that, again, the defense attorneys did what they had to do. The jury misconduct, it's undeniable that she absolutely did mislead attorneys. Do I think that it's enough in itself to have a new trial? It's questionable. I think the judge did the right thing having another juror come in to talk about her influence and whether, as they call her, strawberry shortcake, had this bigger than life influence on the jurors to reach the verdict that they did. I think that's very important. Again, the defense attorneys did what they had to do. If they did not put this motion forward, it's definitively ineffective assistance of counsel because clearly there was misconduct. But does it rise to the level of a new trial? I have to be convinced about that. I'm not sure if it was enough to render a new proceeding here.
And Silva, you make such a great point that everybody has to keep in mind that this is the defense attorney's job to raise these issues, to file the motion. The judges have to make the decisions. I always had to make decisions as the judge because that's our job, but defense has to take this next step. All right, Steve, so theoretically, they've taken this step, they have a hearing. If the judge says juror misconduct does rise to the level that it's a new trial, does Scott walk out of jail when the judge issues that decision?
Well, I think he'll clearly be asked by defense counsel to set bail. And then at that point, there'll be certainly a discussion about that. He may or may not be released. As a prosecutor, I would argue that he's a flight risk. You may have a tougher Rodahoda argued that he's a risk to the public based on the fact that he's been incarcerated for the last 20 years. But as a prosecutor, I would certainly want him to stay exactly where he is. But I think there's a possibility he would be released. And I'll tell you another thing. I as a prosecutor, would really hate to have to try this case 20 years later with faded memories. It's a tough case for a prosecutor as it is. And look, you know, part of what was discussed in the piece that you showed on the media, it was a very emotionally charged case, which I think that papered over a lot of the cracks the prosecution had in order to get a conviction. That emotion may not be present now, 20 some odd years later. So I think it'll be a tougher case for the prosecution if he gets a new trial. But just as defense counsel stated, I don't think he's going to get his motion granted. That's my guess.
And Steve, you know, I'm shaking my head and smiling, and I see Silva's doing the same thing. And I think it's because we agree, and we agree with the piece that Ted Rowlands did that we just listened to, and that is, it is circumstantial evidence. There was a lot of emotion because it came out Scott Peterson was having an affair. Silva, weigh in on what you think is going to be a barrier or burden for the prosecution if they do have to retry this case.
I mean, there's a lot, Judge Ashley. I mean, first, I just want to touch upon something, and Steve is absolutely right about the emotion aspect. You know, judges really do follow public opinion too, and there's a lot of anger about this motion. I know from your viewers and the viewer comments, people are absolutely upset. However, the judge also has to kind of not only follow the law, but they don't want that sort of anger following their career as well. So that's one issue. The other issue, just what you asked Judge Ashley about what the prosecutors have to deal with. You know, there's been a lot of YouTube videos about new evidence with Scott Peterson, and the defense has alluded to there being a home invasion robbery right across the street where Laci Peterson lived. And the fact of the matter that during this robbery or the aftermath, police never checked on those leads, and Laci Peterson was home at the time. So defense is arguing that there is a possible other person that could have been involved in her murder. But just as the problem that we had in the original trial, where is the evidence that ties this potential home invasion robbery to her murder? There's no forensics at all tying anybody to the murder. So, and also defense counsel has not given over specific evidence that could tie this armed robbery to Laci's death. But if we have a new trial, prosecutors are going to have to contend with defense attorneys who have been investigating this for decades, while the prosecutors had, to their knowledge, closed the case and forgotten about it.
And we know the defense doesn't have to prove anything. They don't have to prove, oh, that person did it, not my client. But I would suggest that that's reasonable doubt if they can at all indicate, hey, there could have been somebody else that did this, not Scott Peterson. All right, when we return, we're going to take a look at some of Scott Peterson's odd behavior following his wife's disappearance. That's next here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, previewing tomorrow's final arguments in the Scott Peterson case. Will alleged juror misconduct mean a new trial for the convicted killer? We'll bring you everything you need to know before our cameras take you inside that courtroom. And the very latest from the Kristen Smart murder trial. We've heard incredible testimony, but what has really resonated with this jury?
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Hi, folks. Medicare Part C plans with extra benefits like getting money added back to your Social Security check may now be available